Hey there guys, so this is the first sort of video that I wanted to do when it comes to sort of going over more of my experience and what I've went through as a gay man and really discuss not only of course my experience but also sort of bring more awareness to LGBT issues themselves. So, what I'm going to do today and what I'm going to discuss is sort of go back in time and really sort of show off. It's kind of going to be a show and tell type video where I'm going to basically go over some of the things that I had found in my attic a month or so ago, and really just sort of share all of this with you guys. It's really, overwhelming when I came across a lot of this stuff. There was a box that I had in my parents' attic, and it was a lot of the stuff that I had around the time that I graduated from high school. And like I mentioned, at the time, after I'd graduated high school, I was really trying to figure out myself and really understand more of who I am. So, what I want to do today is share some of the things that really, brought a lot of clarity, after this time of coming out. Um, you know, and again, like there's just so much that I've went through. Excited to really do this and really just dive into this because this has always mattered a lot to me. And I think the reason why it matters discussing, being gay and, going over this is because it's made such a big impact on my life because I've dealt with a lot of, mental health issues, and not having, as much of acceptance as I was growing up. Yes, I do have wonderful family, and I don't want to say that I don't, but it was hard because, my family didn't understand. So, it was just something that I had to figure out myself. So, I want to share a few things with you guys, and this stuff is back when I was a little bit younger, is around, probably about, again, this is like around 2014, some of the stuff that I'm seeing as far as the dates. But I had a lot of stuff that I came across. This is a composition notebook that I had, and I had actually colored it this way. Um, and these are just, some notes and what I was, sort of going through. Um, you may have seen some of these pictures. I have shared some of these pictures of what I've came across. But the reason why I'm sharing this is when I came across, all of this, these notebooks and just everything that I came across, it really brought a lot of clarity, to myself. And it really showed sort of how much I was, you know, suppressing, in other words. Um, and it was overwhelming. When I first come across a lot of this stuff, I really cried a lot because I was just so overwhelmed at really how much it shows of what I was hiding as a person. Um, I had a lot of stuff. If you're not aware, I did do some sort of modeling um, years ago. I haven't done it in a long time. This was me probably back in, let's say, probably 2014 or 15, because I had the blonde streak in my hair. But yeah, this was, again, when I was really trying to, get out there, really trying to discover myself. I also have a ton of stuff, so many pictures that I used to have hanging in my room, I remember. So this one right here is, you've likely seen this. I have posted this. This was when I first went to, well, not my first gay bar that I went to, but this was the first time I really got to see one of the drag race queens at a bar in Nashville. And what really, when I seen this picture, it was just like, it's crazy how much young, how young I was. And it was like, just to see myself smile in some of these pictures was really, it was it was kind of euphoric to see that, um, because you can see sort of a genuineness, like a genuine happiness in how I was feeling in a lot of these pictures. So this is Adore Delano. I'm sure you guys know. I had started watching Drag Race. I think that this was the first season that I watched, and I'm probably going to get the season wrong. It's either maybe five or six that she was in, but this was the first time I actually met a drag race queen, and so I kind of have a soft spot for Adore because that was like a really amazing experience to see her, and I still love her. I think she's an amazing queen. Um, I believe she has came out as being trans. I could be wrong on that, but I love her. I think she's a wonderful queen. I think I just really have always liked her. I guess because she kind of has that rebellious style, and that's why I'd always liked sort of her aesthetic. But yeah, this a lot of this stuff. It's just really cool to come across. This was one that I had taken on my phone. I've always been into having physical stuff, like pictures. I really need to print off a lot of the pictures that I have on my phone. But again, there's so much, and I would love to just have like a whole thing of pictures that I've taken over the years. Um, but that's a bunch of the stuff that I have. Whenever I was in high school, I was really into Lady Gaga. And I remember, believe I had picked this up at Walmart. Um, and I know it had posters in it because it's got at the top that it had five huge posters. And when I came across this magazine, I remember because I didn't see the posters in here, and I remember I actually had the posters hanging in my room. And some of the pictures you can see, like some of my old pictures that I had, you can see sort of them hanging on the wall, or I'd had like a puka shell sort of necklace on. But yeah, I've had this book, this magazine for a while, and I got it specifically because it was like a like a special edition sort of Lady Gaga um, magazine from us, and I just remember seeing it. Yeah, here's the posters because I actually had these posters hanging up in my room years ago. So yeah, I wanted to share that too. Another thing too, I used to draw a lot, and I still do. I still try to take the time to draw when I can. Um, this was one that I did myself. Um, the Kesha logo. I always loved the Kesha logo at this time. This was, like from the album or the Warrior album. I couldn't think of it for a second. But I always liked the aesthetic and sort of the font style of that sort of era that she had. I guess you could call that an era. Um, this is a drawing, Lady Gaga drawing from the Poker Face video that I had did. A lot of these were back when I was in high school. I used to always, when I was with my friend from high school, we used to always draw outside on her on her back deck at her house, and we would just always have like a bunch of pencils and colored pencils all just laid out, and we would just sit and draw. I remember doing that in the summer. um, so it was a fun time. I really miss that. This is another thing that I came across. Again, when I look at this stuff, it does make me emotional seeing it because, like I said, this stuff was in the attic for a while, and I haven't seen it in a long time until just recently. And I was just, so surprised at sort of what I've seen. This is like a sort of a tagline from Cocky Boys. I always liked this tagline. So I just kind of painted that randomly. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of different things that I drew, throughout, a lot of my time sort of figuring everything out. I do have a lot of different drawings that I've done, but I don't want to bore you guys so much, sort of going over this. So I went to a lot of Pride events, and you guys will likely know that I share a lot about Pride, and it has a significance to me because I think it's important to really recognize it. I know there's not, not every person is, all into Pride like I am, but I think it's an important thing. This was one of the Pride festivals I went to. This was actually the second one that I went to. The first one I went to was actually at Louisville Pride in Kentucky, and that was the first one. I do have pictures of when I was there at that Pride. If I can come across them, I have a lot of stuff that I've got kind of laid out here, but it's it's really wild to see a lot of this stuff that I came across. Here's actually when I went to my first Pride in Louisville. Um, it was an experience. It was wild. This was actually the same day too. So yeah. So there's a lot of this that I do have printed out that I've kept, for a long time. And it's wild. It was so wild to come across this, everything that I had seen in here. I had a lot of different pictures in here. Um, yeah, a lot of different ones. But yeah, it was really, I mean, I looked at it and I was like, I mean, there's, you know, and like I said, I knew that, you know, I knew what it was for a long time. And I just went through a period of denial. And in another video, I would like to really dive into a lot of, sort of my issues that I've had with church. And I don't want to say that there's, like every church, there's bad people. I don't want to say that. But I do want to say that there's been a lot of pain and a lot of, really a lot of mental struggles that I've had when it comes to my faith. I really don't know what I believe, to be honest, right now. I'm really going through a journey, as it relates to my beliefs and my belief system in general. So that's a whole nother thing that I would love to discuss. So this is actually what I had in my binder in high school. I remember having this in my binder in high school. I was thinking about it the other day. I did have I always loved this album cover. And I also had the Alejandro album cover I remember it was in my Spanish, my Spanish binder. I had the Alejandro cover to make it sort of fit the theme of my of Spanish class. So I remember having that as well, where she's got the black crow, on her head. I always loved that cover too. But this was actually in I was going to say my Lady Gaga binder. This was in my high school binder. And that's why it's kind of rough, and I just kind of had it stuck in there so it wouldn't get messed up. But yeah, I remember having that, when I was in high school. And there's just so much stuff that I had. I used to get Out Magazine for a while. This was probably back in 2015, I think. Yeah, this was in 2015. A lot of this was around the time when gay marriage was legalized, when it was first legalized, because I think it was around the same time, if I'm not mistaken, 2014, 2015, because I know it was a little bit after I graduated high school when that was, um, passed. Another thing that I came across too is I had a lot of sort of poems. Um, I would have to really share these, in themselves, like as pictures. I have shared them on different platforms, but there was a lot of different poems that I wrote. You know, I, like I mentioned, I did a lot of drawings to sort of. The drawings were a way to, again, express myself. And drawing itself was really a way for me to sort of get out of my head a little bit and sort of really put things on paper. And that's the same with some of these sort of poems and stories that I used to write. Again, I might share these, as well. I have shared them on different social media platforms, but I do want to share these likely again. These really made me cry when I seen them, because I hadn't seen them in so long. But I remember printing them off. So yeah, I have these. If you want, to read them, I would love to share those. Again, there's so much different, stuff that I came across. But again, I don't want to bore you guys with, sort of everything in here. But I really wanted to share a lot of this because it's the reason why. Another thing too is I remember having this. I used to get mail, from the Matthew Shepard Foundation, because I believe I had given to them, and because I signed up for volunteer stuff. I remember at the time, and I was really passionate about that, and I still am. One big thing with me is always been passionate about equal rights. Uh, you know, I suppressed a lot. Like again, I suppressed a lot of stuff for years, and it feels so euphoric and really liberating to come out again and really share this stuff, because it's a weight that's lifted off. And again, guys, that's all I want to share with you. I don't want to bore you to death with sharing everything that I have. But I want to really go further. I want to discuss these things. And the reason why I want to share this is I think it's important to take time to take a step back and sort of remember who you are. Take time to think about in your mind, how did I get here? What all have I went through? Think about everything that you've went through to get to this point. And I just think it's important to really take time and reflect, and just know that, again, like the reason I'm sharing this is to help others. I know what it's like to really struggle. Like I said, I've had a lot of issues, like I said, with church. I've had a lot of issues, you know, with family. I love my family again. But there's been a lot of issues that I've went through. Again, I went through anxiety and depression, um, and there's just so much, as it pertains to my sexuality, that I struggled with for years on end. So I want to continue to share this. I want to dive deep into this stuff. I want to share more of my story, and I'm hoping that it does help you in some way, and that it lets you sort of reflect and sort of think about where you come from, and all that you've went through. We all have stories, and I think it's important to tell them, especially when there's, even if they're difficult stories to share. I think it's important because you never know who it's helping. I want to discuss, sort of about my experiences with anxiety and depression, because there was a time when I was hospitalized, but I won't share that here. I just want to share a little bit about, you know, everything that I come across here recently when I went up in the attic, in my parents' attic, and seen all of this stuff that really showed how much I was expressing myself and finding myself. So, thank you guys once again. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope this gives you a little bit of, sort of, light to your day. Um, but I want to continue to share this. Thank you for checking out my fitness content as well. But I want to make this another priority and share my story on, being gay and really diving into this stuff. So thank you guys once again.